Have you ever stopped to wonder if words spoken decades ago could be as vivid and necessary as they were in the exact moment they were uttered? And what's more, if a voice from beyond, full of wisdom and compassion, could transcend time to touch your heart directly, here and now? That's what we'll discuss today. And what you'll discover may surprise you. Emmanuel, you may have heard the name, perhaps not yet. He wasn't a conventional writer, a common philosopher, or a traditional religious leader. Emmanuel is remembered as a guiding spirit, a constant presence who accompanied Chico Xavier on his mission, offering messages that resonate with impressive power to this day. Stay with me until the end, because understanding who Emmanuel was and why his messages remain so relevant can open new avenues for reflection on life, spirituality, and even the choices we make in our daily lives. But why are so many people still drawn to his words? The answer may lie in the depth with which Emmanuel addressed the great human dilemmas: faith, love, responsibility, discipline, and, above all, the evolution of the soul. He didn't just talk about religion or doctrine. He spoke about the essence of existence, about how to be better, about how to face pain and challenges with courage and serenity. Have you ever experienced this? The feeling of being lost amidst so much uncertainty, unsure of which direction to follow. Well, Emmanuel offered precisely this kind of guidance, a beacon in the darkness. Alongside Chico Xavier, considered one of the greatest mediums in Brazil and the world, Emmanuel built a bridge between the spiritual and the earthly. And this bridge wasn't made of rigid dogma, but of simple, profound messages that transcend cultural and religious boundaries. Many who have come into contact with his words describe the feeling of receiving intimate, almost personal advice, as if it were an answer to the most silent questions we carry within. What you'll hear in this video may awaken that same feeling in you. The fascinating thing is that, even in a world completely different from the one where Emmanuel brought his messages through Chico Xavier's psychography, his teachings remain incredibly applicable. In an era marked by haste, anxiety, and the relentless pursuit of success and recognition, Emmanuel's reflections serve as an invitation to balance, self-knowledge, and a rediscovery of often forgotten values. He reminds us that spirituality is not an escape from reality, but a path to confronting it in a more conscious and transformative way. Perhaps this is why so many people report that when they read or hear a message from Emmanuel, they feel as if they've found a key to unlock inner doors, ones that had been closed for so long. Simple words, yet charged with an energy that inspires courage and hope. Who hasn't needed this strength in difficult times? Who hasn't sought an answer that seemed to come from nowhere? It is precisely in this space of silence and searching that Emmanuel makes himself present, bringing reflections that span generations. And it's not just about spirituality as an abstract concept. Emmanuel spoke of practical life, of everyday attitudes, of how to transform small gestures into seeds of light. This is one of the reasons his presence remains so remarkable to this day. The ability to combine spiritual wisdom with guidance, applicable to the real world. Imagine what it would be like if every choice we make carried within it this greater awareness. We're just at the beginning of this journey. Throughout this video, we'll delve deeper into the essence of Emmanuel's messages and understand why they are considered so timeless. Get ready, because what follows may bring answers you may have been searching for a long time. Without even realizing it, have you ever wondered why some words transcend time and continue to make sense even when the world seems to have completely changed? As if a message written decades ago was tailored specifically for the moment you're living in now. This is the mystery that surrounds the teachings of Emmanuel, the spirit who accompanied Chico Xavier and left such profound reflections that they seem to have been shaped to speak to the dilemmas of our time. What you're about to discover may surprise you, because we're not talking about pretty phrases to embellish a book, but living guidance that touches the soul deeply and invites transformation. Emmanuel's messages are like a silent compass, always pointing toward universal directions: love, discipline, faith, forgiveness, and spiritual responsibility. He didn't just speak about abstract concepts, but about practical paths anyone could follow. Stay with me until the end, because when we look at these words carefully, we realize their essence is timeless. Just observe how love, for example, has always been at the center of his guidance. Not the romantic love limited to human passions, but the universal love that reminds us of the importance of seeing others as fellow travelers. Have you ever felt that way? Feeling that a simple act of affection or compassion completely changes the course of a difficult day? Emmanuel knew that this love was the key to transforming not only the individual, but the entire society. Another defining aspect of his wisdom is discipline. In an increasingly fast-paced world filled with distractions, where everything seems immediate and disposable, Emmanuel already warned about the importance of constancy, patience, and spiritual organization. Discipline precedes spontaneity, he said, in one of the most famous phrases he left behind through Psychography. How often do we seek quick results, but forget that true evolution requires perseverance? This message resonates even more strongly today, when we are pressured by a pace of life that often distances us from our essence. And what about faith? Emmanuel wasn't talking about blind or imposed faith, but about a conscious faith, built on trust in God and in life, even when obstacles seem insurmountable. He reminded us that faith isn't the absence of pain, but the strength that keeps us steadfast during the storm. How many of us need this silent certainty in times of uncertainty? This teaching continues to resonate, because we all, at some point, face dark nights in which only faith can keep us standing. Forgiveness also occupied an essential place in his messages. Emmanuel knew that resentment is an invisible prison, capable of keeping us trapped in the past and impeding our growth. In times when conflict, division, and intolerance seem to dominate society, hearing his words about the importance of freeing our hearts from the weight of hurt becomes almost an invitation to freedom. Have you ever experienced this feeling, the lightness that comes after forgiving someone or even yourself? This lesson, so ancient, is perhaps one of the most urgent for today. Finally, Emmanuel always emphasized spiritual responsibility, reminding us that every gesture, every word, and every thought carries consequences. In a 21st century, marked by technological advances and social transformations, we are still invited to reflect. What are we building with our daily choices? His messages continue to resonate as a call to consciousness, reminding us that evolving is not just about seeking individual enlightenment, but also about contributing to the collective good. These reflections, written in the last century, seem to speak directly to the modern challenges we face: anxiety, loneliness, haste, intolerance, and the relentless search for purpose. And this is precisely Emmanuel's strength, offering wisdom that never ages. We are just beginning to delve into the depths of these words, and in the next step, we will further explore how they can become practical guides for facing today's world. Have you ever wondered how to find balance in a world that seems increasingly chaotic, full of pressure, demands, and uncertainty? How to maintain a calm mind when anxiety grips, when loneliness creeps in, or when the feeling of emptiness insists on knocking at the door? These questions, so common in our time, seem to describe modern dilemmas, but the most surprising thing is that Emmanuel, through his spiritual messages transmitted by Chico Xavier, already offered answers and practical paths to these same anxieties many decades ago. What you're about to discover now may surprise you, because we're not just talking about ancient reflections, but about living guidance that continues to speak directly to our current reality. We live in an era marked by haste. Everything needs to be immediate, everything needs to be shared, and we often forget to listen to the silence of the soul. Emmanuel, with his timeless wisdom, reminded us that serenity arises from inner discipline, patience in cultivating goodness, and trust in God even in the most turbulent moments. He didn't just speak of abstract concepts, but of practices that can be applied in everyday life. A look of compassion, a word of calm, a gesture of solidarity. Stay with me until the end, because you will see how these simple guidelines can become true anchors amid the storms of modern life. Anxiety, now considered one of the greatest evils of the century, was already anticipated by Emmanuel in his messages on faith and spiritual balance. He reminded us that much of our pain stems from impatience and the rush to control what is beyond our reach. How many times have you found yourself suffering over something that hasn't even happened yet? Have you ever experienced this, creating scenarios in your mind that only increase your anguish? Emmanuel invites us to live with greater confidence, surrendering to life what belongs to life and taking responsibility only for what we can truly transform. Another very present dilemma is the crisis of values. In an increasingly materialistic world, where having often seems more important than being, Emmanuel reinforced that true wealth lies in what we cultivate within ourselves. His messages are an invitation to reclaim principles such as honesty, compassion, fraternity, and spiritual responsibility. Isn't it curious to see how these teachings remain relevant, even in a completely different context from the one in which they were written? Perhaps it's precisely because they touch the human essence, which remains the same throughout the centuries. And what about loneliness? which even in a hyper-connected world is becoming increasingly common. Emmanuel already spoke about the emptiness we feel when we disconnect from our greater purpose. He reminded us that true companionship arises from attunement with goodness, spirituality, and a clear conscience. Have you ever experienced this, being surrounded by people and still feeling alone? Well, this is where his reflections become even more powerful. They show us that we are not truly alone. When we cultivate faith and love as forces present in our daily lives, the search for purpose is perhaps the greatest dilemma of our time. Amid so many possibilities, so many paths, and so many demands, many feel lost, unable to grasp the true meaning of their journeys. Emmanuel, in his messages, invites us to understand that purpose isn't necessarily found in great deeds, but in the small, everyday gestures. In the sincere effort to improve, in the commitment to doing good, even in silence. Imagine what life would be like if every action were guided by this simple, yet transformative, ideal. These teachings, though transmitted in the last century, seem to have been written for us, here and now. Emmanuel offers us practical keys to dealing with the anxiety, loneliness, crisis of values, and lack of purpose that so often characterize modern life. And it is precisely on this point that we will delve deeper from now on, exploring how to apply these reflections to our daily lives and discover ways to live with greater balance and meaning. Have you ever wondered how a few words, spoken or written at the right moment, can completely change the course of a life? How can a phrase soothe an old pain, rekindle hope, or even give strength to face a storm that seemed unbearable? What you're about to discover now may surprise you, because the spiritual messages attributed to Emmanuel, the spirit who guided Chico Xavier on his mission, have been precisely that source of comfort and direction for thousands of people over the past few decades. We're not just talking about distant stories or records in books, but real experiences, lived by ordinary men and women who found, in these words, the answer they so desperately sought. Imagine someone in the midst of profound loss, unsure of how to move forward. How many of us have experienced this? The feeling of emptiness, injustice, or even revulsion in the face of pain. It was in moments like these that many readers of Chico Xavier, inspired by Emmanuel, reported finding not only solace but a new way of understanding life and death. One woman, for example, who had lost her son unexpectedly, said she felt true relief for the first time when she read a psychographed message in which Emmanuel spoke about the continuity of life and the inevitable reunion of spirits who love each other. Have you ever experienced this, feeling as if a word had been written especially for you? That's the kind of impact these messages have. But it wasn't just those facing grief who found relief. Many also drew inspiration from Emmanuel's guidance to overcome crises of faith, insecurities, and personal challenges. There were those who, immersed in loneliness or doubt about the future, reported that all they had to do was open one of the books dictated by the Spirit to Chico Xavier to feel a new clarity. Phrases about discipline, spiritual responsibility, and trust in God became lifelines for those on the verge of giving up. Stay with me until the end, because you'll realize this isn't a coincidence, but a wisdom capable of crossing boundaries and directly touching the human heart. In many accounts, the encounter with Emmanuel came almost like a calling. People unplanned, received a book as a gift, or encountered a text in a moment of distress, and from then on began to see life differently. One young man, for example, said he was lost in addictions and self-destructive choices when, upon reading a passage in which Emmanuel spoke about taking responsibility for one's own body and the importance of self-care, he was deeply touched. This message was the turning point for him to seek help and change the course of his life. And how can we forget the historic partnership between Chico Xavier and Emmanuel? Chico, with his humility and dedication, became a channel for transmitting these messages, reaching millions of people. Emmanuel, in turn, brought a firm, serene, and compassionate voice, always reinforcing that the true spiritual path lies in love and service to others. This duo, marked by their harmony and commitment to spiritual truth, left a legacy that lives on, nourishing hearts to this day. These stories of transformation are not just records of the past, but continue to happen, because each time someone comes into contact with a message from Emmanuel, it's as if an intimate dialogue is established. Simple words, yet charged with a spiritual power that inspires, heals, and awakens. And perhaps that's why so many people report feeling they weren't alone. That there was a greater purpose behind the pain and challenges they faced. What if you could also find this same strength in Emmanuel's messages? What would it be like to feel a greater wisdom guiding your steps, even in moments when all seems lost? We're about to delve even deeper into these stories and inspirations. To understand how these messages can become a beacon for you amid life's darkest nights, have you ever stopped to think how different life would be if every word we hear wasn't just recorded in our memory, but actually put into practice? How many times have you read an inspiring quote, felt your heart warm for a few moments, but then returned to your routine without allowing that message to truly transform your day? What you're about to discover now may surprise you, because the messages attributed to Emmanuel weren't delivered to the world simply to be admired as beautiful spiritual reflections. They carry a profound calling, an invitation to the daily practice of spirituality, to inner change, and to the evolution of the soul. Stay with me until the end, because understanding this invitation could be the turning point you've been waiting for. Emmanuel, with his clarity and firmness, never sought to simply move with words. He knew that true transformation happens when we move from theory to experience, when each lesson begins to reflect on our choices, our attitudes, and the seemingly small gestures that reveal who we truly are. Have you ever experienced this? Feeling like you know what you should do, but realizing the difficulty of transforming knowledge into action? It is precisely at this point that Emmanuel challenges us to step out of our spiritual comfort zone and embark on a path of self-discovery that requires discipline, love, and faith. What's most striking is how relevant his messages remain. In a society where everything moves so fast, where we seek shortcuts to almost everything, Emmanuel reminds us that spiritual evolution has no magic formulas. It requires dedication, constancy, and above all, a sincere desire to improve a little each day. Words like forgiveness, charity, discipline, and spiritual responsibility don't appear in his writings as vague concepts, but as practical tools for real life. And here's a powerful reflection. What would happen if, instead of expecting major, external changes, each of us took a small internal step every day? These spiritual invitations from Emmanuel are not only for moments of silence and prayer, but also for the most mundane situations. How we treat someone in line at the grocery store, patience with a difficult family member, honesty in a choice no one else would see. Perhaps you've noticed how a small act of kindness can completely transform the mood of a day. This is the impact Emmanuel wanted to show us. Spirituality isn't limited to words. It blossoms in actions. What you're about to hear may seem simple, but it's precisely this simplicity that makes the teaching so powerful. Emmanuel wasn't speaking to saints or enlightened souls, but to ordinary people who carry weaknesses, doubts, and mistakes, but who also possess the capacity to grow, learn, and begin again. He knew that the spiritual journey isn't a straight line, but a constant process of falling and rising again. And it is in this process that the soul finds its true strength. So, if his messages have touched your mind and heart so far, the next step is to let them touch your practical life as well. It's not enough to simply admire the words, you have to live them. And here's a question that can change the way you see the world. What if we started applying some of this wisdom to our daily actions today? What would the world around us be like? This reflection opens the door for us to delve even deeper into the impact these practices can have, not only within ourselves, but also on relationships, society, and the future we are building together. And perhaps it's precisely at this point that Emmanuel's journey connects with your own story. Because each reflection he left only truly comes to life when it resonates with those who hear it, those who feel it, those who decide to reflect on themselves. That's why I want to invite you to actively participate in this moment. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below with what has touched you most so far, or even an experience you've had where a spiritual message made a difference in your life. What you share can inspire others who, like you, are also searching for answers and light. And if this conversation is bringing you some clarity or comfort, please take the opportunity to like the video. It may seem like a simple gesture, but it shows that this type of content makes sense and needs to continue. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people who may need to hear these exact words right now. And of course, if you feel the desire to continue following these reflections, subscribe to the channel. This way, you'll not only ensure you'll receive future content, but also become part of this community that believes in the power of spirituality and messages from beyond to transform lives. Each new subscriber is like another flame lit, helping this message illuminate the path for all of us because, in the end, we're not alone on this journey. We're learning together, supporting each other, and every gesture you make here makes all the difference. And as we continue, we'll delve even deeper into Emmanuel's invitation, understanding how to transform words into actions and how this practice can change not only our lives, but also the world around us. Have you ever wondered if you're truly living your life the way you should? If your choices, your steps, even your small daily actions, are connected to something bigger? This question may seem simple, but it carries a hidden truth that spans generations. Amidst the noise of the world, the excess of information, and the pressures of routine, we often forget to focus on what truly matters. And it is precisely at this point that the presence of Emmanuel emerges, a spirit guide who became known for his work alongside Chico Xavier, bringing messages that continue to resonate even after so long. Emmanuel's story isn't just about mediumship or psychography, but about the ability to touch minds with words that transcend time. Think about it. How many messages written in the last century still manage to speak to the dilemmas of the present, such as anxiety, loneliness, and the relentless search for purpose? Isn't it impressive to realize that a spirit who lived in another context, guiding one of the greatest mediums Brazil has ever known, brought reflections that seem made for us, here and now, amid the hustle and bustle of the 21st century? This is the greatness of what Emmanuel left us. Timeless wisdom that continues to illuminate doubts and awaken hope in those who open themselves to listen. Chico Xavier, with his simplicity and humility, was the channel through which Emmanuel transmitted teachings that weren't confined to paper. They became seeds, sown in the hearts of millions of people. And it's curious to realize that, even for those who don't follow a specific religion or consider themselves spiritualists, there's something universal in these words that speak of transformation, mindset, and choices. Emmanuel didn't limit himself to citing doctrines. He spoke about real life, how to deal with pain, how to face challenges, how to find balance between who we are and who we want to be. Have you ever felt like someone described exactly what you were experiencing, even without knowing you? That's the feeling of those who come into contact with his messages. Emmanuel's spiritual authority was built not by imposition, but by the coherence between his words and the strength they awakened. Chico often described him as a firm but deeply compassionate mentor, someone who didn't pat people on the head when they made mistakes, but also didn't shy away from extending a hand when the human heart needed support. This balance between discipline and tenderness is what gives his lessons such impact. He wasn't about promising easy paths, but about revealing behind-the-scenes details of the spiritual journey we all face, reminding us that every challenge is in fact an opportunity for growth. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding Emmanuel is also understanding the power of revelations that transcend time. He reminded us that the material world is merely a learning environment, a stage in a much larger journey. This perspective completely changes the way we face difficulties. What once seemed an insurmountable obstacle begins to be seen as a stepping stone. What once seemed unfair becomes an invitation to forgiveness. How many decisions have you made in moments of pain that later revealed a hidden lesson? This is the essence of Emmanuel's message. Nothing happens by chance. Everything has a greater purpose, even when we can't immediately see it. And perhaps that's why his words remain so relevant. In a society where so many seek quick answers, Emmanuel teaches us that true transformation is silent, happens within each person, and is revealed in the simplest of actions. He spoke about patience, conscious faith, and spiritual responsibility to pick that seem even more urgent today, given the crises of values and the sense of emptiness many carry. Emmanuel didn't offer magic formulas, but rather keys for each person to find within themselves the strength to move forward. His partnership with Chico Xavier was marked by discipline and dedication. Chico, with his life dedicated to mediumship, often said that Emmanuel didn't give him ready-made answers, but rather guided him to discover the best path for himself. This detail is revealing, because it shows that the messages weren't a rigid manual, but an invitation to reflection and the daily practice of spirituality. And this practice isn't restricted to temples or moments of prayer, but manifests itself in every gesture of compassion, every honest decision, every choice that reflects love and awareness. The most impressive thing is to see how this wisdom continues to reach people in moments of fragility, bringing comfort, direction, and courage. Words born in decades-old psychographies are still capable of illuminating the darkness of many lives. This shows that we are not just talking about spiritual messages, but a true heritage of human teachings, which help us look within and find answers we often seek outside. And if Upon hearing all this, you feel something resonate within you. Comment, "That makes sense to me." This small interaction may seem simple, but it's the way to set in motion this chain of reflections that connects us, strengthens us, and helps us continue together on this journey of discovery. Have you ever noticed how some words seem to cross generations and reach us as if they were written today, even when they were spoken decades ago? This is exactly what happens when we delve into Emmanuel's messages. There's something about them that transcends time, as if they were spiritual seeds sown in fertile soil, waiting just for the right moment to germinate in the hearts of those who encounter them. These aren't pretty phrases or superficial reflections, but a set of profound truths that directly touch our most intimate doubts and the challenges we face in our daily lives. Emmanuel, at his core, spoke not only about faith, but about true transformation of mindset, about conscious decisions, and about the impact each choice has not only on our lives, but also on the lives of those around us. He reminded us that love is the foundation of everything, but not a romantic or idealized love, but rather the kind of love that requires discipline, patience, sacrifice, and surrender. How often do we fail to practice this love because we lack the courage to step outside our comfort zone? Emmanuel said that love is not just about feeling, but about acting, understanding, and forgiving, even when it doesn't seem easy. And here's a powerful revelation. True spirituality is measured much more in small, everyday actions than in grand gestures. Have you ever been in a situation where the simple act of listening attentively to someone completely changed how that person felt? That's what he was talking about, this spiritual responsibility we all carry, even if we're often unaware of it. Another fascinating point is how Emmanuel portrays faith not as something blind, but as an act of trust, capable of sustaining difficult decisions. Faith for him was fuel to face life's uncertainties, even when everything seemed to be falling apart. It's interesting to note how these words, written in a context completely different from our own, still resonate today, because the inner workings of the human soul remain the same. We seek meaning, we struggle with doubts, we desire peace. This search is timeless, and that is why Emmanuel's messages remain relevant. But perhaps what's most striking is the way he spoke about forgiveness. How often do we carry hurts like invisible chains, believing we're punishing others when in fact, we're only imprisoning ourselves? Emmanuel repeated that to forgive is to free oneself, to break the cycle of pain and make room for new inner revelations. And when he said this, it wasn't as someone offering distant advice, but as someone who deeply understood human wounds. This hidden truth about forgiveness shows us that it's more of a gift to the one who forgives than to the one forgiven. Have you ever experienced that feeling of lightness after finally letting go of a hurt that seemed eternal? That's the real impact of the messages he left us. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because there's an essential part of this timeless wisdom that speaks directly to spiritual responsibility. Emmanuel called us to reflect that every thought, every word, and every gesture generates consequences, like ripples that spread across a pond after a stone is thrown. This may seem simple, but think about the implications of this in your own life. How many decisions have you made that, consciously or not, ended up shaping the entire path that followed? And how many times have you wished you'd had the clarity to choose differently? These messages, though ancient, invite us to develop a different mindset, that we are not here merely to experience fleeting experiences, but to evolve, learn, grow, and positively impact the world. It's as if Emmanuel is telling us, you are not alone. Your life has a greater purpose, and every action is part of that journey. And when we hear this, we can't help but feel that, somehow, everything makes sense, even in the times when pain and doubts seem to dominate. It's curious to think that, while these words were spoken so long ago, they speak to today's dilemmas: the stress of quick choices, the pressure for results, and increasingly fragile relationships. Emmanuel spoke about discipline and how it connects directly to freedom. Not the kind of discipline that oppresses, but the kind that organizes, directs, and strengthens the soul. This is one of the great hidden truths. Without discipline, there is no true freedom, because we become prisoners of our impulses. And this is where one of the greatest transformations these messages can bring lies. They teach us that the path to evolution isn't external, in grandiose revelations or extraordinary signs, but in the silent background of our everyday actions. This is where Emmanuel becomes so relevant. He spoke to the real human being, with flaws, doubts, and fears, but also with an immense capacity to love, learn, and reinvent themselves. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, exploring how this wisdom can be applied practically, even in the midst of modern challenges. Showing that Emmanuel's words are not just distant spiritual lessons, but concrete invitations to live a more conscious and transformative life. And before we continue on this journey, I want to leave you with a light provocation. Comment below, "This makes sense to me." That way, I know this reflection has also found a place in your heart, just as it has so often found in the hearts of others who are on this same quest. Have you ever noticed how modern life seems to speed up in an almost unbearable way? As if we were rushing along without ever really getting anywhere. Between messages arriving at every moment, commitments piling up, expectations pressing down on us, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, anxious, and sometimes even lost. What if I told you, there are answers to these dilemmas, ones that were transmitted decades ago but remain incredibly relevant, as if reaching across time to touch us right now? Emmanuel, a spirit guide who worked side by side with Chico Xavier, had this ability to see beyond the surface, to penetrate the depths of the human soul and reveal hidden truths about how to face each person's inner challenges. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what he leaves us with goes far beyond theory or pretty phrases. Emmanuel spoke directly about the issues that so impact our mindset today: anxiety, loneliness, a crisis of values, doubts about purpose and direction. He teaches us that these experiences are not mere obstacles, but opportunities to develop inner discipline, self-knowledge, and the ability to reflect on our own choices. Think about anxiety, for example. How many times have you found yourself trapped by thoughts that spin in circles, worries that seem endless, or expectations you've placed on yourself? Emmanuel reminds us that anxiety often stems from a desire to control the uncontrollable and a lack of connection with what truly matters. He proposes a subtle but powerful shift, redirecting the mind, exercising patience, and trusting the journey, even when the results aren't yet visible. But it's not just anxiety that deserves attention. The crisis of values, so prevalent in today's world, is also something he addressed clearly. In societies where consumerism and pressure for status often override human essence, Emmanuel reminds us of the importance of cultivating integrity, compassion, and spiritual responsibility. He invites us to reflect on the real impact of our decisions, on how every choice, no matter how small, affects not only our lives but also those around us. Every act of honesty, every gesture of kindness, every word spoken with awareness, becomes an invisible legacy, a current of positive energy that reverberates in daily life. Loneliness, another contemporary dilemma, is also addressed practically in his messages. In a hyper-connected world, it's paradoxical to feel isolated or misunderstood. Emmanuel shows us that loneliness doesn't need to be seen as abandonment, but as an opportunity for introspection, self-discovery, and strengthening one's essence. He teaches that true connection depends not only on the physical presence of others, but on inner harmony, awakened consciousness, and the practice of values that bring us closer to goodness. When we understand this, we realize that we can transform moments of apparent isolation into rich periods of reflection and growth. And of course, there's the search for purpose, which is perhaps the most profound issue facing so many today. Emmanuel invites us to reflect that purpose isn't necessarily a grand destiny or an extraordinary achievement. It reveals itself in small choices, in silent gestures, in daily efforts to live with coherence and love. Each conscious action is a step toward building a life aligned with our deepest values. It's a subtle, almost imperceptible transformation, but one that, over time, generates a real impact on our existence and that of those around us. What makes his messages so impressive is precisely this: practical applicability. They're not distant theories, but concrete guidelines for living a balanced life even in the face of modern chaos and pressures. Emmanuel challenges us to look within, identify points of imbalance, question limiting beliefs, and adopt an active stance in building a life with more purpose and meaning. He reminds us that true evolution happens in the routine, behind the scenes of everyday life, in every decision we make. Even if it seems small or insignificant, each of these reflections offers us a silent invitation to transform how we deal with anxiety, how we evaluate our values, how we connect with others, and how we pursue our purpose. It's a call to action, but also to patience, insight, and the courage to take responsibility for our own choices. And when we begin to apply these teachings, we realize that change doesn't have to be dramatic to be meaningful. It happens in small steps, in seemingly mundane moments that, together, shape a life that's more coherent, balanced, and aligned with what truly matters. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, exploring how these guidelines can be practically integrated into modern life, bringing real impact not only on how we feel, but also on how we act, decide, and relate. Emmanuel's wisdom is not limited to the past. It pulsates in the present and challenges us to live more consciously, to notice every detail of our choices, and to discover that, even in the face of chaos, it is possible to cultivate serenity, purpose, and balance. And to make this reflection even more personal, comment, "I'm on this journey too." This simple gesture is a way to put into words your connection to what we're exploring, and to join this current of reflection and transformation that these messages continue to generate. Have you ever stopped to think about the real impact words can have on someone's life? I'm not talking about motivational phrases that disappear immediately after reading them, but about profound messages that arrive at the exact moment we need them most, offering direction, comfort, and a new perspective. This is exactly what happens with Emmanuel's teachings. Over the decades, countless people have shared stories of transformation, often unexpected, that began precisely when they encountered a word, a passage, or a piece of guidance that seemed to speak directly to their soul. Imagine the weight of loneliness, doubt, anxiety, or fear being eased by words that transcend time and space, coming from a spirit who understands human fragility and strength in a unique way. This is the effect Emmanuel managed to generate through Chico Xavier, creating an invisible bridge between the spiritual world and people's everyday lives. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because these stories of transformative impact show us that we're not just dealing with abstractions, but with real experiences of change. For example, there are reports of people who, upon reading a psychograph attributed to Emmanuel, found the courage to forgive someone they'd carried in their hearts for years. This simple act ended up releasing previously pent-up energy, transforming relationships, and opening up new opportunities for happiness. Other people discovered the strength to face professional or personal challenges that seemed insurmountable, realizing that the spiritual responsibility of each decision is directly linked to their own well-being and the impact we have on the world. It's fascinating to note how something written so long ago still manages to speak to contemporary dilemmas, offering clarity and guidance, as if it were a detailed map for navigating the stormy seas of modern life. These accounts don't emerge from nowhere. They have a solid foundation of spiritual authority. Emmanuel wasn't just any spirit, but a guide who worked side by side with Chico Xavier, one of the most renowned mediums in history. Known for his humility, consistency, and dedication to serving others, the relationship between Emmanuel and Chico was marked by discipline, dedication, and mutual learning, which lends even greater credibility to the messages conveyed. We're not talking about mere words, but a legacy built with care, attention, and profound respect for each individual's spiritual evolution. And the impact of this is visible. People of different ages, cultures, and backgrounds find in Emmanuel's guidance a source of emotional and spiritual support. Something that goes far beyond superficial reading and penetrates the depths of everyday life, affecting decisions, mindsets, and behaviors in lasting ways. What's striking is realizing how this wisdom operates across multiple dimensions. There are reports of those who, after better understanding the teachings on patience and discipline, were able to transform their routines, reorganize priorities, and deal with daily pressures with greater serenity. Others found in the messages of love, forgiveness, and faith a source of comfort in the face of loss or personal crises, feeling that, even in the absence of immediate answers, there was a greater purpose guiding each step. It's as if Emmanuel invites us to see life not just on the surface of events, but behind the scenes of each experience, revealing that every pain, every obstacle, and every choice contains an opportunity for growth, learning, and evolution. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because understanding the transformative impact of these messages allows us to see how they not only comfort but also inspire action. Emmanuel's words encourage reflection on one's own attitudes, more conscious decision-making, and a transformation of mindset. Each teaching acts as a key that opens doors to new ways of seeing the world and oneself, reminding us that true change begins internally but reverberates externally, affecting relationships, choices, and even the way we experience everyday challenges. It's fascinating to note that, even in the face of the chaos and complexity of modern life, these stories of transformation are not an exception, but rather proof that practical spirituality has a concrete effect. It doesn't promise a life without difficulties, but it offers tools to deal with them in a more balanced, conscious, and meaningful way. And this is where Emmanuel's wisdom becomes so relevant. It acts as a silent guide, ever present but not imposing, allowing each person to decide how to apply these teachings to their own journey. Each story of transformation that emerges from these messages is a testament to the power of reflection, spiritual practice, and mindset change. They show us that it is possible to find balance, purpose, and hope even in the most challenging moments, that true evolution is built on daily choices, and that sometimes a single word is enough to light a light that illuminates the entire path ahead. And to keep this connection alive with you, who are following along, comment below, "This makes sense to me." It's a way to make this experience more concrete, to put your own perception into words, and to join this current of reflection and transformation that Emmanuel's messages continue to generate. Have you ever wondered why some words can touch us so deeply, leaving a lasting mark even when life goes on as usual? This is precisely the power we find in Emmanuel's messages, words that go beyond spiritual concepts and become living invitations to reflection, practice, and interchange. They are not just pretty phrases or fleeting inspirations. They are guidance that challenges us to look within, to recognize our patterns, fears, and limitations, and, above all, to act consciously in every decision we make. Emmanuel had a unique insight into the human soul, understood the inner workings of our thoughts, emotions, and dilemmas, and knew that true transformation does not arise from theories or sermons, but from the practical application of spiritual knowledge in every detail of daily life. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because it's fascinating to see how these messages invite us to take responsibility for our own evolution. They remind us that we can't rely solely on external circumstances to find balance, peace, or purpose. Real change begins within. Imagine if every decision, every action, and every word were viewed through the lens of this expanded awareness. What would our mindset, our relationships, and our personal journey be like if we began to act with more attention, compassion, and alignment with the principles Emmanuel left us? He invites us to reflect on our daily choices, often invisible to the world, but crucial for building our character, our serenity, and the impact we leave on those around us. Emmanuel spoke of love, not as a distant abstraction, but as a daily practice. True love requires discipline, patience, humility, and the courage to face internal conflicts without being dominated by ego or the judgment of others. It is a silent force that, when applied consistently, transforms our mindset, shapes our decisions, and opens space for new opportunities for learning and connection. The spiritual responsibility he presents to us is not a burden, but a key to inner freedom, realizing that by cultivating values such as forgiveness, empathy, honesty, and faith, we impact our own lives and, simultaneously, the lives of those around us. But the invitation goes even deeper. Emmanuel's messages encourage us to question hidden truths within ourselves, to see beyond the surface, and to understand that the soul's evolution does not occur immediately or linearly. There are stages, reflections, and small revelations that silently accumulate, generating significant changes in behavior, perception, and the way we experience the world. This continuous practice of self-knowledge and alignment with spiritual principles is what creates real impact, transforming crises into learning experiences, challenges into opportunities for growth, and moments of solitude into rich periods of introspection and self-discovery. And that's precisely why these messages remain so relevant. Even though they were written decades ago, they speak directly to contemporary dilemmas, anxiety, feelings of disconnection, loss of moral compass, and the search for purpose and meaning. Emmanuel reminds us that each of us carries within us the power to transform our own experience, develop resilience, reorganize priorities, and act consciously, even in the face of the pressures and complexities of modern life. He invites us to see each day as an opportunity for spiritual practice, for strengthening our mind and soul, and for aligning our thoughts, feelings, and actions. The transformative power of these messages lies not only in their intellectual understanding, but in the concrete experience of what they teach us. When we begin to apply love, discipline, forgiveness, and faith in small daily actions, we realize that subtle changes generate profound results. A word of encouragement, a decision made with clarity, a gesture of empathy, or the practice of reflective silence can significantly alter how we interact with the world, how we feel internally, and how we perceive our own journey. Emmanuel shows us that true soul evolution is not a distant or abstract goal, but a daily practice, a conscious choice to live with greater integrity, purpose, and positive impact. And it is precisely this possibility of concrete transformation that leaves us reflecting on a powerful question. What if we started applying some of this wisdom to our daily actions today? What would the world around us be like? What kind of decisions would we make? What words would we choose? What gestures would we prioritize? What impact would we have on our own lives and on the lives of those who cross our path? The great revelation here is that we don't need to wait for extraordinary moments or great opportunities to initiate meaningful change. Every moment is a chance to act more consciously, to adjust our mindset, to cultivate values that truly matter. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, exploring how the practice of these teachings can manifest itself in concrete, everyday ways, revealing ways to deal with modern challenges and to experience true inner transformation. One that is not measured just in words, but in decisions, actions, and real impact on each person's journey. And to keep this connection alive, comment, I'm on this journey too. It's a way to make this reflection part of your own experience, to put into words your connection with what we're exploring, and to join this current of transformation and self-discovery that these messages continue to inspire. And if you've made it this far, it already shows that this topic truly resonates with you and that you're open to reflecting on the messages Emmanuel left us. I invite you to continue this journey with us. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future content that explores the spiritual world even more deeply and the teachings that can transform daily life. And if this video touched your heart in any way or sparked any important reflection, leave a comment with the phrase, I'm with you until the end. It will be incredible to see the participation of each person who connected with this message, and this helps create the community of reflection and growth we so desperately strive for. And if you felt this content provided any insight or sparked curiosity, naturally, give it a like, because it's a way to show that this connection truly existed, that learning was shared, and that together we were able to keep this exchange of ideas and experiences alive. And look, there's a video right here that complements this topic. Click and stay with me there to learn even more about how to apply these messages in practical life, understand new perspectives, and continue on this journey of self-discovery and transformation.